Hello, I'm Dr. James Kelly. I'm the Medical Science Liaison for L-Nutra.
And I'm Dr. Kurt Hong. I am the Executive Director for Center for Human Nutrition at USC.
And we're here today to talk about fasting. So let's talk a little bit about fasting mimicking diets and how you mimic fasting with food.
So traditionally, when we want to get the benefits of fasting, we really have to do a prolonged fasting, meaning that typically we're talking about water-based fasting for at least 3 to 5 days, if not longer. The problem with water-based fasting is for a lot of patients, number one, it's highly inconvenient. Number two is for patients with certain medical problems, it can actually pose certain risk. However, we do want to more and more patients to take advantage of the fasting state, and hence the fast mimicking diet was developed. So essentially what the fast mimicking diet hopes to do is while you're able to consume calories, your body thinks essentially you're in a fasting state. The type of food that's used in the fast mimicking diet are actually a plant-based regimen from about 200 different sources, and it's a combination of different micro and macronutrients that even though you're eating calories, your body thinks, again, it's in a fasting phase.
And this is real food? This is natural food?
This is actually natural food, and as I mentioned, this is plant-based food. This is completely gluten-free, it's completely dairy-free, and the beauty of this particular regimen is you do it for 5 days. This is a box of food that's delivered to you. It's clearly labeled. This is day 1, day 2 through day 5. It's a combination of different types of food, whether they're soups, bars, as well as various snacks. And essentially, during those 5 days, you basically would just consume this box of food. Once you're complete with the 5 days, for the next 25 days, you just need to maintain a healthy diet. A lot of people like the flexibility that they don't have to go on a strict regimen. You know, there's a couple of different intermittent fasting regimens that's also pretty popular out there now, where you have to fast either every other day or you cannot eat for at least 15 to 18 hours. And this, even though some of these other fasts, you can get some of the similar metabolic benefit, the fast mimicking diet is the only diet that actually truly mimics more of a prolonged fast.
And what happens during that? What are the clinical benefits of that?
So if you look at a lot of the preclinical as well as clinical studies that have been published over the past 10-15 years, the first thing that happens is that your body actually goes into a ketotic state after you basically go on the fast for the first 12 to 15 hours. Once you get past that initial 24 to 48 hours, this is where you see a lot more profound benefit at the cellular level. Whether this is augmenting the cellular stress resistance, whether or not this is activating what we call the autophagy response. And what the autophagy response is really will optimize your cellular maintenance. You basically allow your cells and your tissue to operate better, more efficiently, if you will. And once you get past that initial 4 to 5 days, you get additional benefit where you actually see an uptick in terms of stem cells in the peripheral blood. This is an important part of basically the benefit of fasting because these are the stem cells that participate in tissue regeneration and rejuvenation.
Wow, great. So what happens to the body during this, like during day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? What can I look forward to experiencing?
So the first couple of days is a relatively easy diet to follow. It's anywhere between about 850 up to about 1,000 calories. By the time you get to day 2, there are some patients who may experience mild headaches or they may notice a little bit of fatigue. But once you're able to get through about day 4, by day 5, you actually feel a lot better. We actually have a lot of patients who actually will report back to us telling us they generally feel better, they have more energy, they have more mental clarity, and they love the fact, again, it's only a 5-day cycle. For those patients who then basically proceed to complete that cycle 2 and cycle 3, because they've already done the first cycle, they realize it's much easier the second and third cycle.
So each time you do it, the side effects get less severe and less common?
Absolutely.
Great. If you'd like to learn more about fasting mimicking diets, you can go to www.prolonfmd.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kurt Hong. I'm the director of the USC Center for Human Nutrition. I'm very happy to be here today with Dr. Walter Longo, who is one of the pioneers in fasting science. Dr. Longo is also the director of the USC Longevity Institute. So Dr. Longo, one of the questions that I get a lot from many of my patients is really the excitement in the science of fasting. However, we do get a lot of patients who are wondering, are there a different type of fasting? You know, there are a lot of terms that are being used out there. Intermittent fasting, time-restricted feeding. Is juicing considered a fasting? Would you be able to kind of explain to us in detail the science behind each and also what are the differences?
Yes, sure, Kurt. So usually intermittent fasting, most people refer to think of intermittent fasting as including all kinds of fasting period as well as time-restricted feeding. And time-restricted feeding is really the restriction of the feeding period during the day for a number of hours. So for example, if you eat for between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., that is the 12-hour time-restricted feeding. You have something very popular called 16-8, which refers to fasting for 16 hours a day and eating only within 8 hours a day, let's say 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that's considered, most people view that as intermittent fasting. Also, another, one of the most common intermittent fasting procedures is the 5-2 diet or some form of the 5-2 diet. And this usually refers to a very low calorie, normally about 500 calories days, a couple of times a week. So you could have a consecutive, so let's say a Monday and Tuesday you eat 500 calories and then you don't eat any more calories for those days, or you can have, let's say, a Monday and on Thursday. So they can be continuous, 2 consecutive days, or they can be in 2 different days of the week. And then the other, what we've been working on is really something that is often included in the intermittent fasting group, but is in fact not part of intermittent fasting, and it's called periodic fasting. And periodic fasting refers to something that you don't do all the time. So you might do it once a month, but you might also do it once every 4 months. And this is lasting at least 4 days usually. Of course, the fasting, the periodic fasting can be different length depending on the need on the specific use of it.
Now, would you recommend, or do you see a lot of patients who've done just water-based fasting or periodic fasting, and what are usually some of the challenges there that you might see?
Yeah, so water-only fasting, we originally started with clinical work on cancer patients, and we immediately realized that the patients did not want to undergo water-only fasting. Right. About 70% of the patients refused to do it, and also the oncologists were very much worried about placing patients on a water-only diet. And we also realized, as we were following thousands of patients really all over the world, or we were hearing from thousands of patients that were doing water-only fasting, we realized that there is lots of problems associated with these long periods of water-only fasting. These are usually done in specialized clinics that have medical personnel, and of course, so water-only fasting can be done in a safe way, but only within a clinic. What we've developed is a fasting mimicking diet. And the fasting mimicking diet is a low protein, low sugar, but it's a really very complicated, complex diet that is there to allow people to eat. The standard one is called Prolon, and it lasts 5 days and allows people to eat between 800 1100 calories a day, but at the same time it makes them reasonably full, and also is really there to prevent problems, to prevent side effects. And so this was clinically tested here at USC, and you were part of that trial.
Hello, I'm Dr. James Kelly. I'm the medical science liaison for L-Nutra.
And I'm Dr. Kurt Hong. I am the executive director for Center for Human Nutrition at USC.
And we're here today to talk about fasting. So, a lot of people have been talking about intermittent fasting. I'd like to discuss a little bit of the differences between intermittent fasting and fasting mimicking diets, just to clear things up for people.
Absolutely. So we have a lot of patients that will come to us and they believe they are on some sort of fasting regimen, whether this is a juicing diet or what they consider to be a time-restricted feeding, meaning that they will try to find out 15 or 18 hours a day where they don't eat or they skip meals here and there, thinking that they are able to derive benefits of fasting just because they are able to skip caloric intake. There actually are now very well delineated studies focusing on the biologic changes when you actually go through a fasting regimen. And for you to really get the metabolic as well as other additional benefits of fasting, you really have to do fasting for at least 24 to 48 hours. Now the challenge is going to be anytime you do a more prolonged fasting, the compliance rate as well as some of the other potential risks starts to pop up. And this is where there is an important role for a fast mimicking regimen to really fill in that void.
Okay, so in intermittent fasting, you're not truly in a fasting state. So what kind of benefits would you be getting from that versus, say, fasting mimicking diet?
So there are generally two basic forms of intermittent fasting. There is one form where you actually will do alternate day fasting, or there, as I mentioned earlier, time-restricted fasting where 4 or 5 days a week you actually will find that 15 or 18 hours. So typically with both of those intermittent fasting regimens, you will get some weight loss benefits. And with the significant weight loss, you may also see some improvement in terms of a patient's lipid profile or glycemic control. But beyond that, in terms of cellular stress resistance, in terms of significant reduction when it comes to inflammation, and even basically stem cell based regeneration, those are something that really you need to do much more of a prolonged fasting.
So let's talk a little bit, you mentioned the clinical trial. Are there any implications of fasting mimicking diets in terms of overall health and well-being, like with chronic ailments?
That's a great question. So if you look through the process of fasting, one of the significant benefits of fasting or fast mimicking regimen is it allows our body to basically augment or optimize a process called autophagy. And what autophagy means is that it's the ability for the cell to actually maintain its irregular metabolic function. So as our bodies basically grind through our daily metabolic needs, there are actually a lot of debris that can build up inside a cell. And what the autophagy is allow the cell to be able to clean up these debris, allow basically the cell as well as the organ and the tissue to function a little bit better. Typically in a traditional fasting regimen, you don't see this uptick or improvement in the autophagy until you get to about day 3 or 4 of fasting. With fast mimicking diet, essentially you're also going to get those similar benefits.
If you'd like to learn more about the science of fasting and fasting mimicking, Dr. Longo has a book titled The Longevity Diet, which summarizes stem cell-based regeneration, rejuvenation, aging, and the effects of fasting and fasting mimicking on the body. Hello, I'm Dr. James Kelly. I'm the Medical Science Liaison for L-Nutra.
And I'm Dr. Kurt Hong. I am the Executive Director for Center for Human Nutrition at USC.
And we're here today to talk about fasting. So Dr. Hong, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the different types of fasting, because I know there are quite a few and there can be a lot of confusion out there about what they each mean.
Absolutely. So the term fasting has been used by consumers to mean different things. You know, we have actually had patients who assume juicing is a form of fasting. And if you look at all the literature out there, there are also different uses of fasting, whether it's intermittent fasting versus more prolonged fasting. I think one thing that's really, really important is to look at the biological effect of the different types of fasting. And there are actually a lot more clinical data supporting why different forms of fasting can contribute to different metabolic benefits.
Okay. So, for example, time-restricted feeding versus intermittent fasting versus prolonged fasting, what do those mean?
To really get a good understanding of what's going on and the potential physiologic changes that our body experiences with fasting, we really have to understand exactly how our body utilizes our energy. So once you actually start to fast, which means basically you go without food, the first 8 to 10 hours, your body will try to deplete your sugar or your carbohydrate storage. And usually this is stored in the form of glycogen, either in the muscle or in the liver. Once you get past that initial 12 to 24 hours is where our body actually undergoes ketotic changes, where our major energy source becomes ketone. And so for a lot of different type of fasting, until we can get to at least that 24 hours, they're really not considered to be true fasting or what we consider to be biologic fasting. So one of the forms of fasting sometimes people will bring up is something called, as you mentioned, is time-restricted feeding, where you go 15 to 18 hours without eating. And there are definitely some benefits for time-restricted feeding. So for instance, we see patients who are, if they are able to do that 3 to 5 times a week, they can get some weight loss benefit. And sometimes with significant weight loss, we will see some improvement in terms of their metabolic panel.
And that's where I have another question about, I've heard that fasting for several days in a row can be very challenging, and I've heard about fasting mimicking diets. Would you mind talking a little bit about what fasting mimicking means?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for different reasons, whether it's religious reasons or personal reasons, people have done water-based fasting, sometimes for as long as 5 to 7 days. And while some people are able to kind of do a prolonged fasting like that, there's certain inherent dangers, and also compliance becomes a big issue. And this is where, the fast mimicking diet becomes a real, much more practical solution for a lot of patients. And what fast mimicking diet really just means, as the term implies, it's a way where by consuming certain type of food, your body thinks it's going through a fasting state, even though you're actually not doing a water-based only fasting.
So it's basically stealth food. It's a way to trick your body into thinking that you're fasting while still getting real food.
Absolutely.
Great. Are there any fasting mimicking diets available on the market right now?
Prolong currently is the only fast mimicking diet that's on the market. And the way basically the consumer will get the benefit from Prolong is, as I mentioned, it will be 3 cycles. And the Prolong cycle is meant to be really easy to get started. It's a 5-day cycle where you would actually consume the food that's provided to you. And for the next 25 days, we recommend patients to continue their healthy habits. And that will make up 1 cycle, and you will do it for 3 cycles.
Great. It's wonderful information. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If you'd like to learn more about the science of fasting and fasting mimicking, Dr. Longo has a book titled The Longevity Diet, which summarizes stem cell-based regeneration, rejuvenation, aging, and the effects of fasting and fasting mimicking on the body.
Welcome to Prolon, the first and only 5-day fasting mimicking diet. Prolon is the result of 2 decades of research and development conducted at the University of Southern California's Longevity Institute and Diabetes and Obesity Research Institute. Different fasting options that are currently popular include time-restricted feeding, intermittent fasting, periodic fasting. Prolon is a form of periodic fasting that allows you to eat natural, safe, and healthy food while your cells remain in a fasting state. Prolon is the only meal program to promote stem cell-based regeneration in just 5 days of fasting with food. Our meals include nutritious bars, soups, a variety of snacks, drinks, and supplements. These specially formulated fasting mimicking meals provide your body with optimal nourishment specifically designed to support energy while keeping your body in the protective fasting mode. The benefits of Prolon include cellular level rejuvenation, autophagy, which is the cleanup and repair of your cells, loss of excess body fat, maintenance of lean body mass. The results of the research have been published in top scientific peer-reviewed journals. Learn more at prolonfmd.com.
So how should you use Prolon? Well, the program has 5 day boxes. Each one contains all of the contents for what you should be consuming for that day, including things like a healthy nut bar for breakfast, soups for lunch and dinner. So it's important on Prolon to make sure that you consume only what's in each day's box during that day. We give you a meal card that suggests how we would recommend you might eat this, but you can really eat the contents of that day's box in any order you like, just as long as you only consume the contents for that particular day. There are some tips and tricks to help you succeed with Prolon. It's important to consume plenty of water during the meal program, as there's less salt per day than you would typically eat during your normal diet. So we want to make sure you stay very well hydrated. It's also important to take it easy during the diet. The work you're doing is the actual Prolon meal program. Working out isn't going to be much of a benefit, and all it'll do is potentially put you at risk. So if you insist on working out, please limit it to about 15 minutes of vigorous exercise per day. But we prefer that you don't, especially on day 2 and 3 while your body's still getting acclimated. Another thing that's important on the meal program is to continue taking any medication your doctor prescribes you unless otherwise specified. If you just do 1 box of Prolon, you'll get most of the benefits that we've discussed, but we strongly encourage you to follow our clinical trial and do 1 box per month for 3 consecutive months. This will give you a much stronger and longer lasting benefit. So even though the meal program is only 5 days long, there's actually a 6th day, the transition day when you've finished. It's important to take it easy as your stomach's still getting used to traditional food. So in the morning, drink something easier on your stomach, liquids are preferred. Then for lunch, maybe have some pasta or rice, something a little softer, and then you can try meats for dinner in small amounts. We encourage you to go slowly. And for the rest of the time, we actually don't have any restrictions on what you eat moving forward. Obviously, we encourage a healthy meal program, doing something like a Mediterranean-style diet that's high in healthy fats, low in animal proteins is important. But other than that, the people in our clinical trial actually didn't have any restrictions on what they ate between cycles, and they still did very, very well with 3 cycles of Prolon. Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. James Kelly, the medical science liaison for L-Nutra, the makers of Prolon, which is the world's first and only fasting mimicking diet. And I'm here today to show you what's in the box. So, Prolon has been carefully formulated with decades of clinical research and millions of dollars of funding at the University of Southern California's Longevity Institute under the direction of Dr. Valter Longo, one of the world's leading experts in longevity. And what it does is carefully mimic the benefits of 5 days of fasting, giving you the full regeneration and rejuvenation that you would get from a water-only fast while still being able to eat food. We give you 3 meals a day, plus snacks, plus drinks, and dessert even on some days, which helps ease the burden of fasting while also giving you many of the macronutrients and micronutrients that you wouldn't normally get during a water-only fast. So when you open the box, the first thing you'll see is that we have carefully constructed 5 days, and each day box has all of the contents we think you should eat during that day. We give you the nutritional information here, as well as a guide on what's in the diet and a little bit about how it works and precautions to take during it, as well as a meal card with a suggested order for how to take the diet each day. Now we have, on day 1, we give you the guide for when we think you should eat all of the food, but it actually is your discretion to use it how you like. As long as you keep every item from each day within that one day, you can eat it in any order you want. If you want to do breakfast for dinner, you certainly can. That's your prerogative. So let's go ahead and open day 1 and see what's inside. So on day 1, we actually give you quite a bit of food, even though it looks like a small package, including breakfast bar, which is mostly healthy fat in the form of macadamia nuts, some honey, and some other healthy ingredients, as well as kale crackers for snack. But the true backbone of the diet is soups. So on day 1, we give you a tomato soup for lunch, as we suggest, or a minestrone blend for dinner. We also give you supplements, including NR1, which is many of the vitamins and minerals you wouldn't normally get during a fast, as well as algal oil, which is an omega-3 plant source. We also give you many healthy herbal teas, which we recommend that you can use in the water bottle and drink throughout the day for hydration. We also give you olives for snacks. So as you can see on day 1, we actually give you quite a bit of food, even in a small package. And we give you Choco Crisp for dessert. Now on day 2, the diet gets a little more interesting. As your body starts to transition over to a different energy source than its natural carbohydrates and sugar from food, we give you, in addition to a breakfast bar, we also give you an L drink, which is essentially just glycerol that your body can use for energy when you're in ketosis or starting to move towards gluconeogenesis. This is just a shortcut to how the body makes energy in that form. As you can see, we dose on the back. We give you a guide for, based on your weight, we want you to pour that amount out into the water bottle and fill up the water bottle with water and drink that throughout the day as an energy source. Again, we also give you healthy soups that are carefully formulated to be the exact ratio that's invisible to the body, as well as the nut bar for breakfast, a number of healthy herbal teas again, Choco Crisp for dessert, olives for snacks. We have the sea salt and the sea salt with garlic, and the NR1 supplement for vitamins and minerals. Day 3, 4, and 5 are essentially similar to day 2. We just vary whether you eat kale crackers and olives or Choco Crisp. but essentially the same. So day 1 is about 1,150 calories, and then day 2 through 5 are about 800 calories. And again, it's all carefully engineered, natural plant-based food and supplementation. We hope you enjoyed as much as we do, and we look forward to speaking with you about it.